berserk and has a gun.
berserk and has a gun.
Yeah.
And then that was it. And then the other call was, Jeremy Bamber says his dad called him. And, I mean, it's pretty solid evidence.
Well, and there's different timestamps.
Yeah, about 10 minutes difference.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the funny thing is I remember reading, and it just stood out as odd to me that they have two different timestamps, and they're almost exactly 10 minutes apart.
Yeah.
But one of the rationales is obviously the officer who was taking the note misread the time on the clock, and it should have been 24 instead of 34 after the hour, whatever it was.
It was like the one of them was 3:26, and the other one was 3:36.
Yes.
And I believe that Jeremy Bamber's call was at 3:36.
Yes.
Right. But here's the deal: is that in response to Neville's call, they had dispatched a car to the farmhouse at 3:35.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I don't know, man. It's not just incompetence at a certain point. I mean, it's
at some point you kind of think it's suspiciously bad.
Yeah,
suspiciously incompetent.
Yeah, I mean, maybe somebody didn't like Jeremy. I don't know.
I have no doubt in my mind that a lot of people didn't like Jeremy.
He doesn't seem like a likable guy, but that doesn't mean he should be in prison.
No. But on the bright side, in prison, he has obviously got a lot of time to work out.
Oh yeah.
He does.
He's got lots and lots of time to work on his appeals because he just keeps appealing this case.
Well, he's also working on his guns, evidently, because the photos of him today, he is kind of a big dude.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, keeping in shape, you know? Yeah. Oh, back to our mystery. 3 days after the murders, Jeremy's cousins went to the house because they felt like the police had they didn't feel like the police were really paying proper attention.
Yeah.
And they wanted to go search the house themselves.
They were suspicious, right? They thought Sheila wasn't capable of that sort of thing, so they thought, well, clearly somebody else did it, and the police didn't search for evidence, which is fair. I mean, they said, well, the gun always had a suppressor and a scope on it, and neither of those things were on the gun when you found it, so where were they? And the police said, we didn't find it.
Well, and evidently they weren't easy. I imagine the suppressor wasn't hard, but I know the scope required a screwdriver to take it off.
Yeah, but I mean, it's one of those things, probably a screwdriver, maybe even just a dime or a nickel, something like that. They're not hard to get off at all. It's not. Anybody could do it, and of course the suppressor just screws right on. In their searching of the house, they went to the gun closet.
Cousins?
Yeah, the cousins did. Yeah, and they found the silencer in the
just
gun
right
closet.
There,
yeah.
Right exactly where it would be.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Good job, coppers.
Yeah, this is, and they keep calling this everywhere. They call it the gun cabinet. But really what it is, it's a small little stubby closet underneath the stairs.
It's the Harry Potter closet.
It is.
Yeah, exactly.
It totally is.
Yeah. So they noticed that it had red paint on it, and it was also sticky with a little bit of blood. So they called the police, and the police eventually came by and got it.
3 days.
Took them 2 or 3 days later.
I thought it was 10.
3 days later.
Okay, 3 days.
3 days later, they went and got it.
There was something else 10 days. Was it when they took photos? Official crime scene photo. There was something that happened.
There was something like that. It was. How long? How does it take that long?
Yeah. No, definitely no. They actually took crime scene photos like the day of.
But not great ones, right?
Yeah, but they were thorough enough to bring up one anomaly.
Really interesting anomaly.
A really interesting anomaly. Yeah. So the family, the cousins, when they found this thing, they saw that paint. They went back to the farmhouse looking for the source of this red paint that was on the suppressor, and they found it in the kitchen where the big fight took place. So there's an August stove, like a big old, I don't know, oil stove, old-fashioned kind of stove, and there was a mantle over it that was painted red, and there were a bunch of scratches and gouges in this thing, and that paint did match the paint on the suppressor.
Wasn't there red paint like underneath it too that they matched to actually the nail polish color that was on Sheila's toes?
Well, yeah, they were looking for flecks of red paint in the crime scene photos because the Bamber's defense team hired an expert in photo analysis, and he was expecting to find flecks of red paint underneath where all this happened in the crime scene photos. He did not see it.
Yeah.
He saw a fleck of something red, and he finally matched it to a chip in Sheila's toenail.
Toe, yeah.
Her toenail polish. Yeah. And
so a chunk of that came off.
Yeah, apparently. So maybe there was a struggle. I don't know.
But the marks on the mantle weren't in the original crime scene photos, right?
They weren't visible in the original crime scene photos.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, so that's
really suspicious.
That's a little suspicious, don't you think? Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. Let's move on, and we'll talk about that some more later. After the funerals, they had a funeral for Neville in June, and then they had a separate funeral for Sheila and the kids. And then Jeremy Bamber went to Amsterdam. He tried to buy a large amount of drugs and offered to sell some nude photos of Sheila. Actually, what it really was, he actually didn't do that in Amsterdam. He was back in Britain, and he went to the Sun, which is a tabloid.
I was going to guess it would be the Daily Mail, but yeah.
Yeah.
You had a good shot.
It's close.
Yeah, no, he went to the Sun, and he said, "Hey, I've got some. I don't know if they were totally naked pictures or just kind of revealing pictures or what they were, but the guys at the Sun thought it was kind of creepy and inappropriate."
Even the guys at the Sun.
I know.
Thought it was creepy and inappropriate.
I know, seriously. And so, I mean, this is like just not long at all, like after her death.
No.
And yeah, just weeks. Yeah. And he's offering to sell naked pictures over to the newspaper because he wants some cash. And so they just decided, well, screw him. And so they ran a front page story about how he had tried to sell naked pictures of his freshly dead sister to them.
Yeah,
kind of embarrassing.
Not a great story.
No. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So anyway, after his little jaunt in Amsterdam, he was spending a lot of money because, surprisingly, he had all kinds of funds available to him now.
He inherited like $500,000, right?
£500,000.
£500,000.
It was like £436,000.
Pretty
close. It was a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, then all of that wasn't cash money. This is assets.
Right, assets and all that stuff.
Yeah.
No, he had a big bankroll available.
I guess I just want to point out, a lot of people think it's really, really suspicious that he went out and was partying and doing a lot of drugs and stuff like that. Frankly, if my whole family died in a really gruesome way and then I had a lot of money, I would be trying to escape reality whatever way I could.
Yeah,
I would buy the most amount of drugs that I could possibly buy. I would Charlie Sheen that stuff. I would go full Charlie Sheen. I would be snorting everything I possibly could, drinking everything I could, sleeping with whoever I could, just to get away from the reality. Yeah, and so I think it's just so dumb that people are like, well, he did go spend a lot of money. It's like, well, yeah, what else are you going to do?
It's asinine.
Your whole family was just murdered.
And everybody thinks it's okay. You go to a funeral, and then afterwards, everybody raises a drink to that person. Mm-hmm. That's totally okay. Mm-hmm. Well, in my family, we tend to raise more than one.
Oh, we do too. We're Irish, yeah.
Yeah, well, and then, so you go. But, yeah, you bring the great point of his extended family doesn't like him, and he probably doesn't like them very much. He doesn't now, at least.
Yeah, sure.
And so he's going to go grieve in the only way that he can figure out as a dumb 24-year-old guy.
Yeah, that's the other part we forget. He was 24 years old.
And the other thing to remember is that it might very well be that he didn't like anybody in his family, and he wasn't that sorry to see him gone.
Yeah, that's also possible.
That doesn't make him a murderer.
That's true.
Yeah.
Makes him a big jerk, but
probably. I mean, yeah. And Jeremy, about a month after the murders, he screwed up big time. It was
whether guilty or not. He screwed up big time.
He screwed up.
No, he's guilty of this.
I think what I heard happen is he was with Julia, his girlfriend Julie Mugford.
And he'd been dating her for several years.
2 years.
Yeah.
And
she's the one that he called that night.
Yeah,
That's
she
right.
did.
Right.
Yeah. And he had apparently told her all kinds of details about what he did. Apparently, she was in the know about the murder, which to me is telling anybody. Supposedly she was. So anyway, apparently they were together. I think at his place, and he got a phone call from an ex-girlfriend, and then she overhears him making a date with his ex-girlfriend, and so she flew into a rage, threw some stuff at him, and it was kind of a little physical altercation. He dumped her, and which is a really stupid thing to do. It's really stupid to tell somebody all these details about the murder that you committed, and then dump her.
Yeah,
really dumb.
Yeah, well, she threw a bunch of stuff at him, and then he twisted her arm behind her to get her to stop.
Yep.
And then she stormed out.
Yeah.
And then wasn't it
4 days.
Half the time I read that she went to the cops, and the other half the time I heard that they pulled her in for some stuff. She was...
Well, she had had troubles with the police. Several other things. There was some theft. There was
there were a lot
checks,
of things. Yeah.
There was pot.
There was pot.
There was breaking and entering. There was pot, theft, and one other.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that kind of reduces her credibility. But she was the star prosecution witness in Jeremy Bamber's trial, believe it or not.
So she told the cops something.
So she went to the police and changed her story because they had talked to her about what happened and everything.
They had at least done that.
Yeah. So she goes to them and she tells them that actually Bamber said that he hated his parents. He said at one time what he really wanted to do was go over there for dinner and drug them and sedate them and then come back a little later on when they're all passed out and burn the house down. That was one of apparently his fantasies. And he had talked about murdering them in other ways. And she also said she saw Jeremy's mother's bike at his house.
June's bike?
No, it was June's bike. Yeah. And that was a key part of the prosecution's case, was that he bicycled over there to murder everybody.
Yeah.
So he could leave his car there, and his car wouldn't be seen on the roads. And she said that he phoned her. She said a lot of stuff. I'm not going to tell everything. She really did.
She spun a tale.
Yeah, she did. She called him up that night, the night of the murders, and said, tonight or never. And then she said that she went to the farmhouse in the morning of August 7th after the murders because apparently Jeremy wanted to see her and then, have somebody that he knew to talk to.
Cared about, maybe.
Yeah. And
presumably.
So the cops went and got her and brought her there, and supposedly he took her aside when they got there, according to her, and she said, quote, I should have been an actor. Unquote.
He told her that he should have been an actor. He was doing so well or something like that.
Yeah. Although there was the same thing when she showed up. There was I saw an interview with one of the policemen who was there investigating at the time, and so they took them into the house and they found a room that didn't have a corpse in it,
which was hard to do.
Yeah, I know.
Wasn't easy.
Yeah, and they found a room that didn't have a corpse in it. And they said, yeah, you guys can just go in there and pee together and yada yada. And then they shut the door, and the cop says he could swear that just as soon as that door shut, he heard a laugh. He said that he wasn't sure. He was like, at the time, I thought he was saying, I thought, well, maybe it was a cough. But it was like, it sounded like a laugh.
Well, wasn't there some report of when Jeremy was at the funerals that he was kind of, oh, I'm really, really sad, and then gave this huge smile to his cousins or something like that?
Yeah, it was his cousins. Yeah, they were in the car, and his cousin, David Boatflower, said that he was in the back seat, and he turned around and he gave him a huge grin just as soon as they were outside of the funeral. And then he said his other cousin, I think it was his cousin, said he did it, didn't he?
I don't know. Again, it's one of those. Just because he didn't like his family doesn't mean he killed them all.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah.
Especially the other thing to point out, I guess, is that in all of the stories, all the tellings that Julie has of all of his fantasies of killing his family, it was not very personal, right? It was like poison them and set the house on fire, not look them in the eye as I shoot them point blank 20 times, right? Not 20, that's an exaggeration, but in most of the things that he said, I think, we all read kind of the same stuff, and she said that he fantasized about killing them in multiple different ways, and I think every single one that I remember reading was poison and do something, or drug and burn the house down, or something. None of it was personal.
Yeah, he certainly didn't detail anything like, hey...
Intimate.
Intimate is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I don't know if she made this stuff up or not. Apparently one of her roommates also said that Jeremy hated his parents and they hated his family. So maybe he was going around talking about how much he hates his parents. But again, the guy was 24 years old.
Yeah.
And you tend to say and do kind of jerkish things at that age.
I said stuff like that all the time.
Yeah.
I say it about you two all the time. I mean, I can understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to murder these two and start my own podcast.
I do. Every time I listen to the
I'm
edit,
going to murder you two and then do a podcast on just your murders.
Yeah, it'll be like Serial. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my own podcast with blackjacks and hookers.
Nice.
All right, so we know she's questionable.
Yeah, she is. She also said that Jeremy said that he hadn't done it, but that he had hired a plumber named Matthew McDonald to do it for £2,000.
Okay.
Which is a really really bargain basement price for murdering 5 people.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And actually, that guy turned out to have an alibi. Obviously, the police pulled him in, and he had a good alibi. So
ironclad is what they say.
That's what they say.
And wasn't she granted immunity for like all of her crimes in exchange for her testimony?
Got out of a lot of trouble.
Yeah, that's another reason to question her reliability as a witness. Again, she's angry about being jilted. She did have a history of dishonesty. She was,
she's motivated.
She's motivated by this agreement with the
Give
prosecutors.
testimony that they want to hear.
Yeah.
And then she doesn't have to go to jail.
Yeah. And so at this point, the police put him under surveillance. I'm talking about Jeremy. They saw that he was selling off the family silver and antiques and stuff like that to raise cash and doing a lot of partying. And so at one point, he'd gone off to Saint-Tropez for a vacation. When he came back and he got off the plane, they arrested him. And that was in September '85, about a month after the murders. Mm-hmm. And then a year later, the trial started. That's October '86. The prosecution's theory was that Jeremy left the farm about 10 p.m. and went back to his house, and then came back by bicycle in the wee hours of August 7th. He broke into the house to the bathroom window, which apparently I think the latch was defective or broken, or it was.
He could use a pen knife.
He had a knife. Yeah, you could use that to unlatch it. So he snuck in. Here's the problem that I have with this: is that if he snuck in and surprised everybody in their sleep, what about the dog?
What do you mean, what about the dog? The dog knew him.
Well, the dog still would have barked some until the dog established who he was. The dog would hear him coming in.
If he was coming in through a window, dog would have barked.
I think so, yeah.
My parents' dog barks at me when I walk in the front door.
Yeah, but I have known plenty of dogs who sleep on the bed with their master, and something falls on the floor downstairs, and the dog doesn't budge.
Yeah, that's true. But this dog
because they have a dog doesn't mean the dog is going to go bananas.
That's true, although the dog was doing a lot of barking later on. Of course, there were a bunch of corpses in the house.
Breakfast time.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, just because there's a dog doesn't mean that the dog would have gone haywire when he came in. The dog may have walked into the hallway and he went, "Hey, Poochums, how's it going?" Oh, it's you. Okay, no big deal.
Poochums?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, don't you call your dog Poochums?
You don't have a dog?
I have 2 cats that think they're dogs.
We know.
Yeah, anyway, where are we at here? So I will try to reconstruct the whole crime thing. So assuming that this is just what the prosecution says. He got the rifle, went up and shot his parents. Neville runs downstairs. There's a fight. He finishes Neville off, goes up and shoots Sheila, and then shot the twins as they slept. Then he arranged the scene to incriminate Sheila, the Bible, and he put the silencer away because he figured out at this point in time that her arms were just not long enough for her to pull that trigger when the silencer was on the end of that gun. He also took the phone off the hook, went out the window, cycled home, and then called the police and said he'd gotten a phone call from his dad. The prosecution argued that Bamber had not received a call from his father, and I don't know how they could really argue that. How can he say that he didn't receive a call?
Again,
how do you prove that?
You would think we're very spoiled in this day and age with phone records.
Oh yeah, I know.
And I don't know if they just weren't logged or what.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think also the argument was, right, that since Neville had been shot through the jaw in the bedroom and the phone that was off the hook was the one in the kitchen, the argument was that by the time he'd made it to the kitchen, there was no way that he could have made the phone call, and there was the assumption that would have been the only time he was in the kitchen that evening when that was happening.
Yeah,
I think it's shoddy, but I think that was probably their argument.
I wouldn't assume that. I mean, that's what they do too. I don't assume that because I would think he made the. Again, if she's acting loony with the gun, that's when you pick up the phone. Mm-hmm. If she's already shooting, you don't go for the phone.
You go for a gun.
You go for the shotgun.
That's the other thing that is, if Neville got shot several times and he called, and he calls his son, and I know that Jeremy said, people said, he was the keep it in the family kind of guy, but I've just been shot 3 or 4 times, call an ambulance. Why didn't you call the ambulance yourself?
Well, that's it. And that's one of the things that they were saying, too, is that why would he have called Jeremy instead of calling the police.
But he did call the police.
It appears there is evidence that he called the police.
But he would have said to the police, "I've been shot 3 or 4 times. Send an ambulance."
Oh, exactly.
Which is why I think it's reasonable to assume that he called before he got shot.
Yes,
he did. I think he called before the shooting started.
He did.
Yeah,
and he called. I think he likely called the cops. And then he called his son and said, "You are 3 miles away and you've got a car. Come talk your sister down. Come help me.
Yeah,
call the cops before you leave so there's more people coming.
Yeah, it's
but
not
your
beyond the realm of
sister's gone
possibility.
crazy."
Mm-hmm.
Or he called his son first and said, "Hey, call the cops and get over here." Or just get over here if he did want to keep it in the family, right?
I don't think he told him to call the cops. He just said.
He just said, "Hey, your sister's gone crazy.
Need you over here right now.
Get over here, please."
Yeah.
The line goes dead because he said, he said what he needs to say, stiff upper lip, short and to the point. Line goes dead. He touches the receiver. I'm miming it in the studio. Touches the receiver because I remember those phones, right? Dials 999, completes the call that was logged at the other spot, says, "Okay, there's these people," and then drops the phone and to pursue whatever. I think,
or the phone could have gotten knocked off the cradle during the struggle.
Or during the struggle, yeah.
Yeah, and
or the cops could have done. I mean,
yeah, no. I there's no blood on the phone because the phone call was made before the shooting started. It has to be.
I agree with that.
Nobody tries to make
there
that
was a phone call made.
So I have one question for the police records of the calls. Did they traced the phone number that the call came from, or the caller identified where they were coming from?
Both.
Do you know?
Both times the caller identified.
When did? Oh yeah, so the caller gave their phone number. I think that's what it was.
I don't think there was. I don't even know if there was a phone number.
Okay. No, there were phone numbers on both reports. I mean, the one that supposedly came from Neville had the address, the White House farm.
He said, but in the statement he said.
My reason for asking that is the timeline's weird, and the call to Jeremy is weird, and the whole thing doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, and so it made me start to wonder if maybe it wasn't Neville that called him, but if it wasn't his sister that called. Hey, I've killed Mom and Dad. I don't know what's going on. I've got some problems. So then he hangs up. He calls the cops saying he's Neville to get them to go over. And then 10 minutes later, it's like, crap, I'm going to call the cops again, but I can't be Dad this time, so I'll just be myself. Especially if they're not identified by a traced number.
Did they have photo, or did they have caller ID?
No. I don't think they did. See, and that's why they can't
in
ever
85?
confirm. Yeah, they can't confirm this phone call to Jeremy from the house. So I suddenly wonder if maybe it. I mean, I don't want to sully on the dead, but maybe it really was her, and she called up her brothers confessing what she had done and saying, "I don't know what to do. I just realized I killed them all."
I guess.
Holy crap.
The only argument against that is that the relationship between the siblings did not seem to be particularly robust.
No,
it seems like she would have probably called her ex-husband before she would have called her brother.
Yeah, but he was 50 miles.
Would you call your ex-husband and say, "Hey, I just killed our children"?
I think she had a better relationship with her ex-husband than she did her brother.
It sounds like it wasn't a totally bad relationship, but he was 50 miles away in London.
That's true.
Yeah. And
it just that's not a bad point.
These are things that I keep thinking about because there's so many weird things in this case. I'm like, well, it could potentially fit.
Yeah. But then why would she have killed herself?
Guilt. It's usually why the person at the end does themselves in, is they can't stand what they've done.
Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe she called Jeremy and Jeremy says, "Well, you killed them all?" And she says, "Yes, I've killed them all. What am I going to do?" He says, "Well, usually what people do in these cases is to kill themselves."
No, I mean...
Okay, that's making him out to be probably
we
worse
probably
than
should. We should probably keep going a little bit because I know Joe and I talked about a theory we have.
Okay, anyway, to summarize what I think is wrong with the prosecution's theory, again, Neville was too badly injured to have spoken anyway, no blood on the kitchen phone. He was not, he had to have made that phone call if he made it before the shooting started.
Yeah.
Almost certainly.
I'm not going to disagree with that at all.
Yeah. So that's so. Let's get back to the silencer for a second. They
Which
found
one?
the silencer. Yeah, the one that was on from the 22 that had the blood on it and inside it.
Well, but it's not the only silencer that was in the house.
No, I know, but that was the one that actually went with that 22 rifle.
Is that true? Because I know that there was several silencers and there were several guns, and that the guns got mixed up and relabeled in police custody at least once.
Mm-hmm. Again, great investigation, guys.
Which, okay, makes me wonder if there wasn't more. And I don't remember. I don't remember seeing it specified what type. But I do remember seeing suspicions that they had mixed them up, and that the one that had the blood in it wasn't actually the one that the prosecution was saying originally had been used.
Mm-hmm. That's always possible, but the police wound up with a silencer in their possession that did have red paint on it. It did have blood on the outside and also inside. Because you know how silencers work, right? They're like a tube with a bunch of baffles that have just a hole through the middle of them. And so apparently there was a not a huge amount, but a little bit of backspatter or
which makes sense at a short distance, right?
Short distance, even contact wounds, you know. Like, so the first 4 or 5 of these baffles had some blood on them. And they said it was the same blood type as Sheila's.
They said it was the same blood group.
Yeah, I know. I assume that's British for blood type.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Here's how this goes, because I actually read into this. So in humans, evidently there are one of 2 blood groups, or at least in that family, there was one of 2 blood groups, AK1 and AK2-1.
I don't understand what those things are.
I don't know what I don't know what it means either. If I saw it in front of me, I could say the words, but they are different groups. And the thing is that the technology wasn't all that great. It wasn't as if they were sequencing the DNA.
Yeah.
AK1 is not only present in human blood, apparently, from the stuff I've read. I don't know if that's true, but what I've read is that, well, actually, this is it an N? Oh, I can't remember exactly what the AK1 stands for, but it's in the blood of other critters. Rabbits and dogs and cats included.
Yeah.
So there is some issue in that we found blood on it bit.
Yeah, so it doesn't sound like, and there was some. I'll talk about this in a little bit. Now that we have DNA, of course, I don't know if the silencer is still around. If they destroyed that too, I think it's still around. And they did a little checking.
That was my understanding too.
My understanding is that they tracked down Sheila's actual bio mother. But I'll talk about that in a minute. So, because there was that blood from Sheila's blood group in that silencer, then the prosecution argued that she was shot with the silencer on the gun, and therefore she couldn't have done it herself. It had to have been murder, because her arms, again, were not long enough to reach the trigger.
And I'll mention, I read somewhere online somebody saying, well, she was barefoot, so she could have pulled it with her toe. But please remember, the silencer was not on the gun when it was found.
Yeah, no.
So there's no way she could have pulled it with her toe.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's no way she could have shot herself, taken it off, put it in the cabinet, and then gone back to where she died.
At least not as pristine as she was.
No, well, no. One of the shots went
No, I know.
into
I'm
her
just
neck.
saying, but additionally, actually, that neck one apparently would have not immediately killed her. It was the one that went into her head. So
but it would have killed her.
It would have eventually, but if she had shot herself in the neck, thought, oh, just kidding, this isn't going to work with the silencer on, for some reason, took it off, went down to the gun cabinet, put it back in the gun cabinet, came back upstairs, shot herself again. That's not possible.
Yeah, there's
just dispel that.
It just, it's. I mean, there's a competing theory out there, which is that she was going to try to shoot herself. She realized it wouldn't work, so even the first shot, she took the suppressor off. And I don't know how much of a neat freak Sheila was. She took the suppressor off. She put it away. I mean, you know, for all I know, the suppressor, she took it off in the kitchen and set it on the table. And then somebody came along, like the police, and they said, "Oh, what's this doing laying out?" And I'll just put it in the gun cabinet over there.
Because this is something we haven't actually addressed yet: is the number of people who came through this crime scene.
Oh yeah, it's like about 50 some.
It was a circus.
50 people came through this crime scene before anybody, and there's even evidence to suggest that the bodies were moved.
Yeah, there is.
Before pictures were taken of them. That would absolutely corrupt any kind of body placement, anything of a suicide.
Oh, yeah.
And there's pictures that are taken that show the gun having been moved and laying, I think it's leaned up against a wall near a window, and you can see it in another photo accidentally. Yeah. But then it's back with Sheila. Yeah. There's some things.
So that's also worth mentioning as well. It's totally possible that, there was just a silencer rolling around and somebody thought, I'll just put this away.
Yeah, it's totally is.
Seems unlikely, but I guess I wouldn't be shocked to find out that happened.
No, me neither. The prosecution to sum up the prosecution's arguments, it was claimed that she had no knowledge of guns and no interest in guns. She lacked the strength to overcome her father, and there was no evidence in her clothes or body that she had moved around the crime scene or been involved in a struggle. Mm-hmm. But again, I don't find that dispositive myself because she had the rifle. So the rifle was empty. Her father was still up and about, but wounded. Mm-hmm. He was wounded, had 4 bullets in him. Mm-hmm. So, and she had a rifle that made a nice handy club. And so it wouldn't have been hard to bludgeon him until he was unconscious. And
it's also hard to know if in a situation like this, one assumes that a person would fight back. But sometimes you read about these cases where, a daughter's like just totally beaten on their dad and their dad isn't fighting back because they don't want to hurt their daughter.
Yeah, it could be.
It's possible. Yeah. It's not likely in this situation. It's more likely he was just too injured to fight back. But it's always possible.
Yeah, I mean, he's losing blood and he's like got 4 bullet holes in him. And so the trial ended with a conviction. October 28th, 1986, the jury found 10-2 that he was guilty. So if he had gotten one more not guilty vote from a juror, he would have been let go. But he was found guilty, sentenced to 5 life terms. And by the way, the judge in this case really, I think, moved the goalposts on him. You know what I'm talking about? It was originally supposed to be a unanimous verdict, but they were having trouble reaching a verdict. So the judge basically said, "Hey, you just need to get at least 9 out of 12. So I'm going to change the rules on you. So instead of having to be unanimous."
Well, he also said that they could convict solely on the testimony of the ex-girlfriend.
Those were his instructions. Yeah, that you can convict solely under testimony, which I think
is a highly questionable movement.
Yeah, well, I think the evidence against Jeremy Bamber is really kind of thin. Doesn't mean he didn't do it, but let's examine this. For example, there is absolutely no forensic evidence that links him to the crime scene. I mean, one of his fingerprints was found on the rifle, but he was handling the rifle just the night before, so that's not exactly damning evidence.
And he would have handled it in the past.
Are we doing theories now, or
I think we should.
I'm just saying that I just wanted to sum it up by saying it's kind of remarkable that they got a conviction in this case, considering I think how thin their case really was. Okay, let's talk about the theories. So we got some possible perpetrators here.
And we've talked about some of this stuff.
Oh yeah, we have. Again, I wanted to talk about the 22 shell casings for a little bit. I don't know if they were fingerprinted or not. For all my looking, I was not able to find it. I know they picked them up. They cataloged them. How many were in this room? How many in that room? And yada yada. But I don't know if they fingerprinted them.
Yeah.
But if any of them had Sheila's fingerprints on them, a single one of them, then the case is solved, kids.
I agree.
Yeah. I have no idea if those things are still around. Probably not. And if none of them had Sheila's fingerprints on them,
then it's a correct conviction.
Yeah, then there you go. That explains it too. And it would have been nice to take a look at the note that was in the Bible, because it probably was not a suicide note, but it would have been nice. It would have been good if they could have at least taken a picture of it before they lost it. But we also mentioned just briefly the phone logs. It turns out there are records of a phone call from Neville as well as Jeremy.
Yeah, we
talked about that.
Yeah, okay. Sheila was on, I think this is pronounced haloperidol.
Yeah.
Haloperidol, I don't know. But it's an antipsychotic drug, and some of which was found in her system during the autopsy.
Wait, so we've moved into theories and based on what we're talking about. We're talking
Sheila.
about
Sheila.
Sheila.
Yeah, we're talking about Sheila.
Sheila
did it.
Okay, because
I
was sitting here and I'm like, okay, so we're talking more about Sheila.
We all have the script in
This is
front
the
of us.
justification that Sheila did it in the theories. God, continue on talking about this later.
Yeah, these are reasons to believe Sheila did it.
So she was on a drug.
Yeah, so she was on, I think it's haloperidol or something like that. It's an antipsychotic drug.
But she had been on her dosage just been reduced, right?
Yeah, I had heard that they'd cut it in half. Yeah, so
and it was an injection she had to get.
It was like a monthly thing, and so I don't know how long ago she had gotten her monthly injection.
I thought it was like a week.
I was going to say it's a weekly injection. I think is.
Weekly? Okay.
I do want to mention while we're talking about the drugs that she was on and all of that stuff. I know the perception is that people with schizophrenia are violent, but realistically, clinically, that's not the case. In fact, people with schizophrenia are more often the victims of violent cases than perpetrators of violent cases. That's not to say that they can't go crazy sometimes.
There are some who do that.
And actually, usually that's linked to drug use. And Sheila was using some drugs.
She was also diagnosed as bipolar. Mm-hmm. So she would have fits of mania, which...
And so the whole thing with schizophrenia, right, is that very often you just disassociate from reality. You can't tell what's going on in your head and what's going on in reality. She thought she was the devil. But I want to make sure that
because her mother called her the devil child.
Right.
She thought that her kids were the devil too.
Yeah, she kind of thought everyone was the devil for a while.
Thought her mother was the devil.
Yeah. But I do want to just mention that just because she's schizophrenic doesn't mean that she was violent or capable of something like this.
Absolutely.
But it does seem that her specific case, she might have been capable of something like this, and she might have actually just kind of been guano crazy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. Let's see. Also, another reason I suspect Sheila could have done it is, again, I already mentioned this. Neville, when they had their struggle, if there was between the two of them, had already been shot 4 times. Mm-hmm. She had a rifle to use as a club.
She also had, like we talked about before, the relatively fresh blood.
Yeah, the neck
from
wounds.
her wounds.
Yeah, the wounds in her neck, and it does look from the pictures. There's some nice close-up pictures. I shouldn't say nice. It's
they're close up,
but they're close up.
They're clear,
and the blood appears to be still fresh and wet and not coagulated. It's nice and bright red. You know how that dried blood.
Yeah, it's wet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's thin too. That's the other thing, right? Is that if it was like thick, really gooey things of blood. Well, if it was just a lot of blood, you would assume, okay, maybe it hasn't congealed yet. There's a lot there, but it's pretty thin streams because it does appear that she was shot and then fell backwards. Mm-hmm. So it's not as though blood was rushing out of her. It was just trickles of blood, and it looks real fresh.
And
it really does.
Well, and the other thing that I will point out that I had noticed is that there are 2 bullet wounds, and they're pretty close together, but they're it's one is under the jaw and one is in the neck. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
they're about 2 inches apart or so.
Yeah.
And when she fell backwards, you notice the blood runs in the same direction.
Yeah.
In other words, the path of it is pretty uniform. I mean, they start to come together eventually just because of the contours of her neck.
But it would have been pretty quick, one after the other.
Right.
And there was that burn mark or something. They originally
Muzzle
thought
burn.
there was
a little powder burn,
but there was a little powder burn there.
Yeah.
So she definitely, it was quick and it was point blank.
Yeah. No, it's like they think the first one was maybe 3 inches away, and then the second one was a contact. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, again, 22 rifles aren't terribly noisy, but especially if you get it pressed up against your chin, it's not going to make much noise at all. Mm-mm. So it could have probably happened when they were outside the house, if it was Sheila. And also, the defense team got a blood sample they found Sheila's biomom, and they compared her DNA to the DNA in the blood of the silencer. This is according to the defense team. And they say the blood on the silencer wasn't Sheila's.
Yeah.
So if that's true, then the only real physical evidence the prosecution has, which is that the silencer had to have been on the gun because her blood was inside the silencer, and therefore she couldn't have committed suicide because she couldn't have reached the trigger. Mm-hmm. That whole theory is out the window.
Well, it's also probably worth mentioning that the burn marks that were on her body, right? They were consistent with the muzzle of the gun, not the not
Same
the silencer.
thing with Neville.
Same thing with Neville, that they were consistent with the muzzle of the gun, not the silencer.
Yeah.
So I think that speaks pretty clearly to the fact that the silencer was probably not on when the attack was carried out.
And, and this again comes back to my point of they're not very loud guns and people are a half a mile away. So over the course of, let's say, half an hour, 25 gunshots that are from a .22 rifle in a closed house probably aren't going to be heard, which is why the use of the suppressor is so just off kilter for me. They're far enough away. It doesn't have to have been on the gun during this entire thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it would make sense. I don't know, maybe shoot the kids first, and then
so nobody else knows.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, this is of course saying it's planned out, but
yeah, I don't know.
I know you've got more here for the fact that Sheila is responsible. Correct.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's. I think I've mentioned that the defense also has found gun experts, as we talked about. And then lastly, if I talked about this earlier, if Jeremy Bamber shot his sister Sheila, how did he do it without a struggle?
Yeah, she had literally no signs of struggle on her, right? Not even bruises or anything.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't she have had a strong incentive to try to at least either fight back or try to get the hell out of the house?
Yeah.
And wouldn't he have had to go and grab her and drag her back? Wouldn't she have? They've made a lot about the fact that she had perfect fingernails and no broken fingernails. Well, wouldn't she have been like falling all over herself to unlock the door and get out of the house? And he's grabbing her, pulling her back in. And she's,
and I guess that comes a little bit back to me for I don't know how strong the dosage of the medication she was on. I know it was cut in half, but I don't know.
Well,
some people are affected more by side effects than others. If she was.
Well, and as we said, this drug was known to make people very sleepy.
Yeah, so if she was heavily sedated, if that was one of the side effects she was experiencing, it would make sense. But there's no mention of that being a side effect of hers. So
yeah, no,
it seems like that would be a strong thing to suggest.
Yeah,
right?
there were people that had witnessed her over the past day or two at the farm and said that she didn't seem
she seemed normal.
She didn't seem all drugged out or anything like that. All right, so much for Sheila. So Sheila is a strong contender. I think she actually could be the guilty party here. Well, let's talk about Jeremy Bamber. So what do we got against him? What makes him look as good as a suspect? So
his girlfriend hates him.
The girlfriend testified against him and said that he said all kinds of stuff. Her roommates testified that he had said that he hated his family.
Again, though.
That doesn't prove really much of anything.
24-year-old D-bag, gotta say stupid things.
Yeah, his extended family thinks that he did it. And in fact, those guys went to the police with their suspicions a long time before the girlfriend went to the police. And they said they thought Jeremy was a suspect, or he should be a suspect. It appears, he wasn't a great guy, but everybody thought he was insincere in his grief and that he was acting at the funerals. And then, of course, we talked about the big, huge grin in the car after the funeral.
It makes me think, in Bamber's defense, in Jeremy Bamber's defense, it almost makes me think of Gone Girl. There's that scene where some woman comes up and says, "Can I take my picture with you?" "Okay, sure," and just automatically smiles in the picture, and then goes, "Oh, crap, that might not have been the best thing." And I can just see that same kind of weird brain process sitting in the back of the car. Person turns around, he's like, just kind of moons at him, just because he doesn't know what else to do.
Okay, but also I will say, again, Joe has said this before, we've reiterated again and again and again, just because he didn't like his family doesn't mean he killed them. It's not outside the realm of possibilities to say he did not like his family. He just inherited a bunch of money.
Why I'm bringing it up.
And he was happy.
Yeah.
That's a gross thing. It feels icky to say. But it's totally possible. Just because he was happy his family was dead doesn't mean he killed his family.
I don't remember Devin managing to skeeve herself out in a long time.
It's been a while.
I know. Yeah. Good job.
Yeah.
Let's see. He had a lot of anti-character witnesses. One of the family's employees said that Jeremy was, quote, quite a nasty piece of work, unquote. They had a farm, and one of the farmhands reported that Jeremy was cruel to the animals. And then Neville Bamber's assistant, Barbara Wilson, said that Neville said to her once, quote, "I must never turn my back on that young man," unquote. And he also told her in great confidence, not long before the murders, that he felt that his life might be cut short, and that he thinks it would be Jeremy, probably a shooting accident, but he felt like there's a real possibility that Jeremy might be killing him. So that's another reason to kind of suspect that, well, maybe some psychiatrists have diagnosed him as being a psychopath, although I have to admit other psychiatrists have said he's not.
Yeah. I read a really interesting thing because this case came up on Reddit recently, and I was reading
a Reddit post about that. Is that the one where there's that mega long post about summarizing the whole thing, and then about 13 comments underneath?
No, this one was what case are you 50-50 on?
Oh, yeah.
What do you like? This person could be just as innocent as they could be guilty. And one person said, what the thing is that I just don't like Jeremy Maber. Like he gives me the creeps, and I'm scared that I think he's guilty because I don't like him. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really good thought.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times we're not willing to admit to ourselves that because this person gives me the creeps doesn't necessarily mean that they're a murderer. But it also doesn't mean they're innocent.
No.
Yeah.
It's hard. This one's a hard one. Are they the only two people? Because I kind of think there's a third option.
There's a third
here.
party.
There's a third party, but no, actually, I wanted to say one thing about Jeremy. Even though I think there's no evidence whatsoever except for one thing, which is the lights were out. When the Popo got there and Jeremy got there, the lights in the house were out. If Neville had gotten up to make his phone call, he would have turned the lights on. Now, I guess it's conceivable that if Sheila went into rampage, she would have turned the lights off before she shot herself. But
she may have done the rampage in the dark.
Well, no, but Neville would have turned the lights on
to
make his phone call.
Mm-hmm.
So he would have turned the lights on. And I'm sure he wouldn't have shut the lights off and gone straight back to bed when he's got a loony psycho with a rifle roaming the house.
But I guess he could have turned the lights off to try to hide from her. But he doesn't seem like the kind of hiding guy. His wounds
a big
don't
dude.
seem like hiding.
Yeah, he was a big guy.
A big, strong. Yeah, I mean, he's 61 or something like that, but he was still a big guy,
a vigorous guy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not as if he was a weakling that was going to hide behind a chair.
Yeah, no, I think, and it's if you want to if you're running to get your shotgun or whatever, you want to have the lights on so you can see what you're shooting at.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess it's conceivable that if Sheila did it, that after she got herself all cleaned up and everything, she would have shut the lights back off. And then killed herself.
I guess if she saw the cops arriving, because it's conceivable and actually likely, given the amount of time between when the cops showed up and when they finally went into the house, that she was still alive when they showed up.
Yeah.
That she heard the sirens or whatever,
saw the light,
and thought, okay, if these lights are on, they can see me. I'm gonna turn these lights off. Or even that she was the female body. She played dead in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. Right? Because they were hanging around. She waited until they walked away, creeped upstairs, keeps the lights off. That she would have been trying to, preserve herself, something like that. Mm-hmm. Or even that she had some sort of episode and realized what had happened and turned the lights off because she didn't want to be around it. She didn't want to see it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff is possible. I'm just saying that's.
But I agree, it is hinky.
The lights, the lights are a little hinky. And of course, it could have been somebody else entirely. It didn't have to be necessarily just Sheila or just Jeremy. Somebody else could have been.
Do we all think it's the same? Do you want to say on the count of three who we think the third person is?
What, the cousins?
I don't think the cousins did it.
No, actually, I've seen.
I think the cousins called Wolf. I think that the cousins
they cried wolf.
They cried wolf after staging some things that we see in the photos that weren't there before.
Well, exactly, like the whole silencer thing.
I think that somebody went, "Hey, this got some blood on it." Wham, 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 whacking it on the thing, the mantle.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, I'll take this home. Hey, I know you brought that silencer home, because they did. They didn't leave it in the house. They took it to their own home. You should call the cops. Oh, wow, that's great. Like, I can just see it because this family has just they all got gobs of money out of this whole thing.
Yeah,
well, Joe and I were actually talking about the fact that there's also the possibility that Jeremy may have not done it, but we didn't mention...
He might have engineered it.
We didn't mention that the dinner conversation of the night was, hey, Sheila, you're not doing so great. Remember how your sons were in foster care for a while? We're going to do that again.
Yes.
She probably did not react super great to that. And under the guise of, oh, I heard rabbits, I'm going to go kill them, Jeremy, loads the gun, leaves it out instead of putting it away in the cabinet where it belongs, regardless of his intent, and says, hey, Sheila.
On the way out the door.
That's not going to go super great for you. And there's a gun there. So
he set it all up.
See ya.
He might have.
Or, he
might have said.
But we all have siblings. We all know how to push their buttons, right? That he would have said, oh, this is the button I need to push right now to just drive her.
Yeah, by the way, if this happens, your ex is going to end up with the kids, and you're never going to see them again, and mom and dad are going to lock you up. And blah, 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 blah.
Mom and dad are going to get you committed.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yada, yada.
So she thinks, okay, my only option is to kill. She calls Jeremy. He says, all right, turn the lights off. Whatever, right?
I will option. Turn off the lights. Clean yourself up. I'll be over there soon.
Comes with the police. She goes, oh, crap. Shoots herself.
Realizes she's hosed.
Yeah.
The cousins then realize, okay, that didn't go super great for anyone, but Jeremy's a kind of shady guy. We don't think he deserves the money. We think he's kind of a jerk.
We're pretty sure he did this.
We'll see what we can do.
It, so we'll see what we can do. Fabricates, just a few bits of key evidence.
Yeah.
And he's in jail for the rest of his life.
And this whole thing really hinges on a few key pieces of
that
evidence.
all came out that all happily came out after the cousins brought those.
Well, and if the girlfriend had never come forward, this guy would have never served a day.
Exactly.
It was her testimony only. So I think if that's true, they rolled the dice.
Because it was 4 days,
they
right?
Got lucky.
So they said, "Oh, hey, Julia, we hear things aren't going super great. Are you sure that's what? Are you sure? Because here's a couple £1,000 that says and a no jail time that says that maybe that's not what Jeremy said to you.
Well, and for her, she might have realized that was the only way she was going to roll sixes. She just had to turn over on him and lie.
I'm not willing to necessarily say that anybody is free of guilt, but I think the evidence.
The evidence points to Sheila.
I think it points to Sheila, but then it's genuinely one of those things where I think I'm like 55-45%.
I'm a little more. I'm a little more 2/3 to 1/3. 2/3, I think it's Sheila. Although I do think it is a possibility that. Because after all, when you've got a paranoid schizophrenic in the house, is it really a good idea to leave a loaded rifle sitting on the table?
Particularly when they're probably having some sort of episode because they've received some bad news.
Yeah, there might have been.
And their medication is lower than it normally is, and then your family sprung some. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't make him a murderer; it just kind of means he pulled a sneaky one.
That he was kind of a crappy person.
See, and I'm 75-25, and my 25 is I'm 75 that she did the killing. I'm 25 that the police screwed it up so badly and the cousins meddled so well that he was the patsy.
Yeah.
He was. I think that he's most likely he's innocent.
So that's what we think.
Yeah, when you see things like the 2 phone logs that it appears, and damn it, it's so too bad that they erased those tapes.
Yeah.
I mean, holy crap.
And burned all the other evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when it comes right down to it, Jeremy Bamber would have been infinitely better off if his girlfriend had rolled over on him right away. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that all that evidence would have maybe been preserved.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so it's too bad for him. And she didn't, I'm sure, mean to do him any favors, but she didn't. I mean, what's the word I'm thinking of here?
She didn't mean to do him any harm?
Well, she did, obviously.
She didn't mean to put him away from life?
None of it was deliberate. She didn't I'm going to wait exactly a month because I know 28 days.
It wasn't planned out,
no, it wasn't at all. But anyway, the whole thing is just really a shame. I mean, I kind of hope he did do it because he's been in jail now for
30 years.
Yeah, almost 30 years, so I kind of almost hope he did do it because if he didn't do it, then oh my God, that's horrible.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you guys have any other thoughts or theories or anything, I think that I don't really know, but I think Jeremy Bamber may just be innocent. I think it's possible. I think it's likely, actually. Anyway, let's. I'm just going to do a little bookkeeping here to wrap this thing up. Of
Public
course.
service announcements.
Yeah. You want to know what our website is, I'm sure. You probably already know. But in case you don't, our website is thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. It's a place where you can listen to episodes, you can leave comments, so you can check our links to various informational stuff. You can also find us on iTunes, subscribe, review us. A nice review, preferably. It's not required. As far as streaming, it's anywhere. There's lots. There's millions, billions, and billions of streaming services. Well, maybe not. Yeah, but there's a bunch of them. We are on Facebook. We have our page, and we also have a group, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. And so like us, follow us.
Yep. Like us and follow us. Join the group.
Do not friend us.
Don't friend us. We don't do anything on our regular page.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Where else? We are on the Twitter. And we are Thinking Sideways. That's without that G. And, of course, we have an email. It's thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com.
And the subreddit. Don't forget the subreddit.
Oh, yeah. We got a subreddit?
It's called Thinking Sideways.
Yeah.
Just find us.
Yeah.
These guys always look at me like I'm crazy.
No, I know you've been championing the subreddit.
It's getting there.
There you go.
It's getting there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And last of all, we're on Patreon. Patreon is like... where you go if you want to pledge a certain amount of money per episode.
It's like Run for the Arts.
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
But for podcasts.
That's totally optional. But if you feel like doing that, if you want to support us, because actually, God, we just paid the bill for our hosting for the year.
Really
yeah,
good.
Oh my God.
We appreciate all that help.
Yeah,
because wow.
Yeah, so Patreon.
That thing keep going.
Yeah, patreon.com/thinking sideways, and that's it. So anyway, everybody, next week we'll be back with another hard-hitting mystery.
Probably.
We will.
Yeah.
Maybe.
All right.
A couple of them.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thinking Sideways is not brought to you by Big Hamster. Instead, it's brought to you by CrimeCon. Yes, that's right, CrimeCon 2017, which is this June, June 9th through the 11th. That's Friday through Sunday at the JW Marriott in Indiana. That's Indianapolis, Indiana. It's got unique experiences like canine search dogs. I don't know if you can pet them or not, but you can look at them. Also, crime scene reconstruction, blood spatter analysis. There's a mock jury, and this one sounds fun. Escape the room. Yeah, a lot of podcasters, including us, Thinking Sideways, also Up and Vanished, Generation Y, and a whole bunch of other ones. So be there or be square. So go to crimecon.com and use the promo code Sideways20 to get 20% off your admission, and we'll see you there.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't get it.
Uproot the aliens.
You must unlearn what you have learned. I don't know.
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of Thinking Sideways. I am Steve, as usual, joined by...
Devin.
Joe.
And once again, we have a mystery to share with you.
A really scary one this week.
It is. This is a super scary one.
It is.
Steve's doing his diligence to bring our numbers back down from my spike in the Grime Sisters last week.
No, come on. It's been a long time since we've done a cryptid. So
No, that's
I decided
fair.
it was time to do a cryptid. I got tired of talking about disappeared, murdered people.
Well,
Okay.
That doesn't mean nobody gets killed.
No.
Yeah, stay
Maybe.
tuned. Yeah.
You have to wait and see. In an hour, they'll find out.
Spoilers.
All right, so today we're going to talk about the Lizard Man of Scape Swamp, and this was a listener suggestion. It was suggested by Alex quite a while ago.
Thanks, Alex.
Scape or like landscape and or like
ores and mineral.
Yeah.
Ores.
O-R-E.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because it sounded like you were like scape ore, and I just didn't.
I saw it spelled on one webpage as Scape Whore Swamp.
I think
Did you
that's
see that
wrong.
one?
No.
Yeah.
That's a great typo.
I really did. No, I did. Escape Horror Swamp.
Weird.
And maybe that was the original name, and they decided to drop the WH.
I think it's probably a typo.
I think that's totally a typo.
Autocorrect, if you will.
Yeah.
Back to the story, though.
All right.
This week, we're going to be talking about the Lizard Man of Scape Ore Swamp, which, as we've already been talking about, Scape Ore is a swamp. It is, for those who don't know their geography and don't know Scape Ore Swamp, like, who doesn't? But in case you don't, it is a swamp that is in South Carolina. And just to kind of give you some reference points here, it's about 80 miles or 130 kilometers south of Charlotte and about 40 miles or 65 kilometers east of Columbia.
And it looks to me like, from the arrows, it looks to me like it's actually like part of a river course. Maybe
it really is. It is just part of a giant river course is the best way to describe it.
Or it might be a backwater of a river or something like that. But it's not like a big square or round thing. It sort of snakes around like
it's not like a giant
river
Louisiana swamp or something like that.
No, it's not that huge.
No, not at all. It's actually not that big, all things considered. We're going to be talking about a cryptid. And as always with cryptids, there are going to be variations upon variations upon variations